So I went to Western, as you clearly know, graduated 2010 from MIT Media Information and Technoculture. I then went to school in Florida, where I did my master's in entertainment business. Just a one-year program, so I think I actually started my program and had to fly back for graduation in 2010. And about, I think it was about 3 months before I was set to graduate my program in Florida, I had an interesting opportunity. My best friend, who is now my business partner, who was my best friend the very first day of O Week at Western, Lauren Moore, she sent me a link. She graduated at the same time as me from Western, but moved to New York right away. And she sent me this link to enter to become the social media intern for Charlie Sheen. I don't know if you remember this, but a few years ago, right, yes, laughing. So a few years ago, he was everywhere in the media. And he was running an internship competition among all of that noise. And Lauren thought, since I was applying for jobs, that maybe I should throw my name in the hat for this. And that's exactly what I did, and it's how my career actually begun in a very non-traditional way. So let's go back to those days, shall we? That was me 3 months before graduation when I decided that I would use the facilities at Full Sail to create a video series to throw my name in the hat to become Charlie Sheen's social media intern. Without really doing it intentionally, I created a social media campaign called Tiger Blood Phil, and 90,000 people entered, and very long story short, I made it to the top 50. It actually started with a very small publication in London. The Londoner, it was called, actually. I think that's like the paper that's like on the street corners. It was very, very small. They picked up the story. So I got the email on a Monday night from the Charlie Sheen internship camp saying, you've made it to the next round. And I was like, okay, no big deal. I'm sure me among many other people. The next morning after I tweeted about it or something, the Londoner in London emailed me and said, hey, Phil, we'd love to hear more about what's happening with this story. So I said, fantastic. Give me a call. I'll tell you everything I know. I'll read you the email they just sent, but other than that, I don't really know what's happening. 1 hour after that, the Toronto Star called me, and 1 hour after that, the Canadian Press called me. And once the Canadian Press calls you, you appear everywhere. It's very exciting. So in the course of 4 months, I had 3 major waves of press, which really didn't make a huge amount of sense to me because I was one of 10 Canadians in the running to become Charlie Sheen's social media intern. But that made me really competitive to make sure that people paid more attention to me than anyone else because I wanted to win this thing. So when the Canadian Press called me and they said, Phil, last question for you. Do you know of any other Canadians that are in the running to become this intern? And I said, no, of course not. I'm the only one. There were more than one. This has 2, but there were actually 12. So these are just a few of the articles that were written about Charlie Sheen and about me. And I later found out that actually, I think it had something to do with CanCon, right? Let's make sure 35% of content in Canada is Canadian, so let's tell a story about Charlie Sheen and then tack Phil onto the end of it. I mean, literally, over 100 TV, radio, and print articles were written about me trying to become Charlie Sheen's social media intern. I actually said earlier that this was the first website I ever made, but in fact, I think it was the second. The first website I ever made for a client, the client is actually sitting in this room. So let's give him a special shout out, Mr. Peter Rowe. You were the first website I ever did. And thank you for being here. So I think this was the second website I ever made, which was for myself. I made it one of my grad school classes. And it was just to represent everything that was happening. I mean, this all transpired over a few days. I tried to document my media coverage. I was on Entertainment Tonight Canada. I was on eTalk. I was doing morning shows in the US. It was everywhere, and it was really exciting. I think I learned as much about media in the course of 4 months as I did studying. Maybe I shouldn't say that at a Western alumni event. But I learned a lot about real life experience in terms of managing the media. I had highs, I had lows. It was really exciting. And I kind of rode that wave for a bit. And then this article came out. This was my very last wave of press. So I emailed my new friend at the Toronto Star and I said, hey, I have something fun for you. No one knows this yet, but I'm going to tell you, I accepted an internship with Ryan Seacrest, which is something that I had been working on behind the scenes at Full Sail. I had a professor who was best friends with someone who knew the CEO of Ryan Seacrest Productions, got me a call. They're like, we don't normally take interns, but this kid sounds interesting, so let's have him be our first social media intern. And I was like, yes. Anyone who knows, special shout out to Jordan, actually one of my frosh who's here and making me feel very old. But anyone who knows me from my Western days, I used to host a lot of stuff. So I host Western Idol, I hosted our little, the TV show that we had on campus. That was my life. So to intern for Charlie Sheen was one thing, but to intern for Ryan Seacrest, that was it. Like, that was it for me. So I tell the Toronto Star, hey, this is my third wave of press. I'm kind of savvy by now. So I'm going to give you the exclusive on this story, but I want the front page of the entertainment section. I want a big honkin' article all about me. And she said, no problem. She said, don't tell anyone about this and for 6 more hours, and we're going to give you this great big article. And I said, fantastic. This was the article, Forget Sheen, Hello Seacrest. This article was both the best and worst thing that ever happened to me. Let me explain. So in definitely less than 24 hours, I was almost set for graduation. I was at Universal Studios hanging out with some friends. I got a call on my phone from an LA number, and I was like, who's calling me? So check the voicemail. Phil, call us back ASAP. Okay, it was Ryan Seacrest Productions. Call in, not sure who I'm speaking with. I get connected with a guy named Tony, who happens to be the VP at Ryan Seacrest Productions. And he says, Phil, thanks for calling us back. Are you sitting down? And I said, no, I'm at the theme park having fun with my friends. I thought he was calling me to congratulate me on all the free press that I got him that day, because I was just being honest. I was just being honest, which I'm really good at doing, right? I'm moving to LA in 2 weeks. I'm going to intern for Ryan Seacrest, which is my dream. All positive stuff, until he says to me, Phil, make sure you're sitting down because I have some terrible news for you. I know you're supposed to start your internship in 2 weeks, but Ryan isn't happy. We have $1 million advertisers threatening to drop if we take you on as an intern. So you're fired before you even start. And that was pretty much it. I think I threw like a little bit of an unprofessional hissy fit because I was really upset. So that was how my day went. And the last thing he said to me was, oh, and by the way, don't talk about this. Don't mention his name ever again. And if you do, you're going to be in big trouble. Okay, great. So the first person I called was my mom, who's at the back, who travels with me because I'm home in Canada. And I called my mom and I said, okay, something really bad has happened today. I think it's going to be funny a year from now, but it's not that funny right now. So, and I have people messaging me all summer, right? It's like, Phil, what is Ryan Seacrest like? What does he smell like? Does he really work that hard? And I'm like, Right? I've moved to LA. Anyone who knows me also knows that I don't drive. It's just not my thing. I can do lots of things, but driving is not one of them. So I moved to LA without a car, which if you've been to LA, you know is pretty much impossible. So I'm right around the corner from E. I'm walking past it every day, trying to figure out what I'm going to do with my life. And so basically, I moved to LA with nothing. I had one friend from Western that I knew, but that's it. And she was pretty much set up and had been out there for a little while. So I felt like a pretty big loser. And I couldn't even talk about it. Couldn't talk about the Ryan Seacrest stuff. Couldn't say anything. So basically, I moved to LA with nothing. And that is how it all began. And it fuels my passion for branding. A lot of the information I'll share with you today, because I lived it. I moved to LA after my grad school. I'd been to Western, did my master's. I was like, oh, I'll apply at agencies and get a job, right? Wrong. No one called me back. I ended up doing a workshop over the course of a weekend that was on TV hosting, and I met some clients, some people that needed help with websites. And I was like, okay, well, if no one's gonna hire me, I still need to pay my rent next month. So sure, I'll help you build a website. I'll figure it out, and that's exactly what I did. So that's how I started. And this is us now. This is my team, 5 years later. Still very small. This photo doesn't include my creative team in Europe, but I essentially hire people all around the world. This was the first time we've ever been together in real life. In this photo alone, you're looking at people that we work with in Austin, Texas, Asia. Lauren was in New York for a while, now lives in LA. My mom works for me, that's kind of fun. She lives here in Canada still. So I've got people all over the world that work for me, and that's kind of embracing the kind of workplace that we have now in 2016. It's really, really exciting. So things have obviously changed and gotten better. So this right here, right now, is my Toronto workshop, and I was so happy to team up with Western to pull this off. I didn't really do anything other than show up. Kudos to you guys for organizing it. Sarah and Meg have been amazing. I just got back on Friday from Stockholm, where I was doing some stuff. This morning, well, no, not even this morning. About 2 hours ago, we raced here from Belleville, my hometown, where I spent today and yesterday speaking to high school students and going back to my old high school to hopefully rev them up and do something exciting with their lives. After this, yes, I'm in Toronto. After this, I go to London, England on Saturday, where I'm doing a workshop next week, and then I'll go to the Netherlands, and then I'll go to New York and team up with 2 casting directors in New York. Then I'm going back to Florida to do a workshop with Full Sail for students, and then I'll finally end up back in LA on October 28th. So that's my schedule, and I love it. People think I'm crazy, and I am kind of crazy. But the fact that I get to work from anywhere and do my work and travel, it's a pretty sweet gig. Some of the shows that I work on are pretty awesome. I work for 4 seasons with a shark on Shark Tank. And does anyone watch Shark Tank, by the way? Anyone watch the show? Yeah. So I worked for a few seasons on that. We just had the premiere last week. I've worked on Project Runway, X Factor, American Idol, Dancing with the Stars, MasterChef Junior, The Doctors, shows on HGTV, all kinds of stuff. And while I love entertainment clients, and I work specifically with talent on those shows to help them build their audience and their brands. For example, maybe they go to renegotiate their contract for season 2. We go, yes, the client's talented, but they also have an audience of X number of people, pay them more, So that's really fun, but I get equally excited about people that are just starting a brand new business. You don't have to be rich and fancy and flashy and exciting. I get just as excited to work with entrepreneurs who are excited about building something to show for whatever it is they're passionate about. That drives me far more than someone who is all over TV and has a huge ego. So the last thing that I do, I don't even know if it's the last thing, but this is another layer to my brand, is that they'll call me, this is so silly, they'll call me and ask for my opinion on really hard-hitting issues, like Kylie Jenner's lip injections, or Justin Bieber trying to revive his good boy image, or actually Taylor Swift. This is a story that Ashley put me in at the very bottom for when she was working for CTV Toronto. I talked about Taylor Swift and iTunes and all kinds of stuff. I get the call to weigh in on celebrity brands. And that is just kind of fun. So when I moved to LA, I was like, yeah, I'm going to be a TV host. Nope, I'm not going to be a TV host because there's a lot more people who want this a lot more than me. I was not willing to spend my days going to auditions and doing things like that. Instead, I was like, I'm going to be an expert at something. And if TV is in my cards down the road, fantastic. And it was, which is kind of cool. It just keeps it, pretty exciting. A few other cool media bits that I've done in the last few months. Some of you may know, with Brexit happening this summer in the UK, which I was there for, David Cameron resigned, the Prime Minister resigned. The Daily Mail called me the next day, not about him, who cares about him? They call me about Samantha Cameron, his wife, to ask me, okay, Phil, what do you think is going to happen with her personal brand? She's a fashionista. She's built this really interesting brand. Where will she go from here? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you. Call me in 10 minutes. And that gave me 10 minutes to Google all about her because I knew nothing about her. Nothing. So this happens a lot. You'll get the call, and they'll say, Phil, what do you think? The first one, Access Hollywood. Phil, what do you think of Kylie Jenner's lip injections? It is completely outrageous, let me tell you. You know, blah, blah, blah. Call me, I'm available. Great. Let's find out the difference between Kylie and Kendall and all these others. I've never even watched a full episode, but you learn quickly. So, yeah, Daily Mail, and then I did a lot of sound bites and perspectives on Jian Ghomeshi, which I had to Google every single time they called me because that story really developed and progressed. But it was a really interesting one. I like to weigh in on some of the political stuff and the controversial stuff because this idea of branding is so relevant, not just for public figures, but now for everyday people, which is why, you know, well, some of you might be public figures, you might be fancy, but other people just have an idea that they want to bring to life. And that really, really excites me about the work that I do. So then I'm almost done talking about myself, and then we're going to make this about you. I have a book that I wrote, launched at the California Women's Conference in 2014, called Shut Up and Tweet. I brought a few copies. My sales lady in the back, isn't she cute? That's my mom. She has some copies. If you don't have it, you should get it. It's $15, so we have some copies there. Yes, Sue, yeah, that's her name. Thank you for giving her a shout out. And then I also have a podcast called No Filter, where I sit down and chat with people that I find really interesting, that I learn from, and let people in on my world. So I should mention this too. Part of why I'm doing this workshop series is I'm letting people know. I've described how I work with clients, which is Phil Pallen Collective, our agency. On November 1st, I'm launching Phil Pallen Academy. So it's going to be a membership community all about, you know, branding, building your brand, building your social media presence, but for people that can do it on their own. You don't necessarily have to hire someone and, you know, pay them lots of money. A lot of these things you can do yourself. So we're launching that November 1st, and I'll tell you how you can get more info on that at the very end. This was actually a year ago. This is me walking down the runway, not sure why. They love a spectacle in Japan. So me walking down the runway to do a keynote in Miyazaki, Japan. They flew me there. They put me in the presidential suite. It had a dining room, 3 bathrooms. Ridiculous. And little old me went and did a keynote, for 300 senior marketers from all the top Japanese companies. And they brought me there because they wanted to know how they could learn for their very big corporations strategies inspired by personal branding, so personifying these companies. Companies now are freaking out, not just here or in the US, but also countries around the world, because they're starting to realize that now they're competing against friends and family on your newsfeed. They're vying for your attention. So content has become an unlimited resource. Everyone is creating content, and creating it on its own is just not enough. The limited resource that all of us are chasing is time. It's time. And so companies are now looking to people like me to understand, how can we personify our company? How can we be friends with our audience, our target audience, our customers, our clients, our fans? And so the landscape is really interesting. I used to pride myself on the fact that I didn't do a lot of corporate work because I find it kind of boring. Now I'm doing a ton of it because it's a refreshing perspective that I'll hopefully, you're here, so I'm sharing it with you today, and you'll see that it's really starting to evolve and change quickly. And it's an exciting time for all of us. That's enough about me. So I'm going to fly myself out of there and now talk about the branding process, that regardless of your brand is the same process that I follow. Regardless of level of fanciness, every single person, every single project I approach in this process in order. We start by positioning your brand. okay? And I'll give you the formula for that. Once we've positioned your brand, we want to build something to show for it, right? So we figure out where we're going to build the house, then we build the house, we build something to show for it, and then we stick a for sale sign out front and sell it in that order. Because if we take a house to market and try and sell it without a roof, you're only going to get a fraction of the value that you actually deserve. So that's typically how I approach this. Position, build, and promote. Now, I already see some of you taking notes, which is fantastic, but since I especially like this audience, I think what I'm going to do is send you notes for everything that I discuss so that you can spend your brain power brainstorming and thinking about how all of this applies to you. Just make sure I have your email address, otherwise I won't know where to send it. I have a little notebook at the back where you can, if you've got a business card, just leave us your business card or write your email address in my cute little branded notebook back there. And then I'll send you the notes from this talk so that now you can focus on thinking about how all of this applies to you. But if you want to take notes, go for it. Let's start with my formula for positioning your brand. Again, regardless of your brand, your product, your service, this rule applies. What is it you love? What is it you're passionate about? What do you love to do? Paired with, what do others need? And that's the part that a lot of people forget. Something you love on its own is what I call a hobby. Something you love to do, something you get enjoyment out of, but if it's not paired with something others need and something that they're willing to pay money for, then you're going to have a hard time promoting and advertising and selling your business because no one is going to care. The beautiful thing is that now, 2016, everything is out there. So I'll often ask people, what are your favorite brands? In fact, I'm going to go through a series of questions that you can ask yourself. And it's the foundation for starting to do some market research to figure out where you fit in this world. But this right here is the formula that I share as it relates to your brand. What do you love paired with something others need? I give this example, say your passion is a coffee shop. You wanted to open up a coffee shop your entire life, so you're like, you know what? Now's the time. I'm going to build it. It's going to be branded. It's going to look great. You're so excited about this because it's something you want to do, but there's no need for it because you put it right beside a Starbucks. And then no one goes to your coffee shop, and then it closes because everyone is still going to Starbucks and they're not going to your coffee shop because there was no need for it. I just want to save you from this disaster by sharing the formula so that you can ensure there's a need for whatever it is you offer. And sometimes that's not rocket science. Sometimes it's a very slight pivot from what you've created or what you have planned. And it can make all the difference. And I can actually give you an example of how I started my business. I knew there was a need. People were asking me, Phil, I haven't found anyone who can help me with my website or my branding or my social media. And I said, perfect, I can help you with all of that. Because for me, applying to agencies, if I go work at an agency, I'm going to work for a company that's going to pay me a fraction of what they hire me out at. And these companies are paying, $20,000 to $30,000+ a month retainer for an agency. But what about people who can't afford that, right? So there were entrepreneurs, there were jewelry designers, there were producers, there are business people, lawyers, doctors that all needed help desperately with their branding. So I thought, okay, we have branding people who can build a beautiful brand and then hand it over to you and say, good luck. And then we have social media people who claim to have all the answers when it comes to promoting your brand, but they themselves have awful brands. Brands that were like, oh, that's so ugly. I was like, I can wedge myself between these two spaces and accomplish a lot and keep my overhead low by working remotely and working from home so that people can afford to hire me. That seems like commonplace now, but it really wasn't. It was still kind of a new, innovative business model even 5 years ago, but it's worked out all right. So let's go through some questions. Again, I'll email these to you if I have your email. Let's go through some questions that will help you think about positioning your brand. So, describe yourself in 3 words. Quite simple. Usually people get 2 out of the 3 correct. Usually there's one that people want to be, but they're not quite there yet. The best thing to do, ask people around you. How would you describe me? Ask 5, 10 people that question. You'll start to see similarities in what they tell you. Tell me 3 things I wouldn't know from looking at you. I think about this when I'm writing the About page on your site. Right? What are 3 things I wouldn't know from looking at you? Online, we're trying to recreate the in-person experience. So, tell me something that almost simulates a conversation I would have with you in real life. Name a few brands you look up to. I already mentioned this one. Everything's out there for you to consume. They don't need to just be competitors or indirect competitors. They can be clothing brands, design brands that you like. Go to their websites. How are they making decisions on their website navigation? What are they uploading to Instagram, to Facebook? Go consume all of this. It's all out there. They're spending a lot of money to make these decisions. How about we don't spend that amount of money, but instead we learn from what they're doing well and what they're not doing well, and let that, we're not going to copy anyone, but let that strongly inspire the direction for your brand. Describe your ideal audience in detail. That's quite simple. Tell me the specifics of the person. Don't tell me your audience is, 20 to 50, men and women all over the world. It's not specific enough. I want to know the name of the person. I want to know where they're sitting. I want to know what they do for a living. I want specifics so that you can envision them in your mind and create content and products and services specifically for them. What do you love to do? That's self-explanatory. What's your brand in 1 sentence? Usually people can't answer this question unless they've been asked it before and they're ready. So I usually say, okay, if you don't know the answer to this, if you won the lottery today, wouldn't that be nice? If you won the lottery today, what is it you would do tomorrow? Given that you're still going to have to do something. What is it you would do? I still have never met a person that can't answer that question. So, what's the answer? Give it some thought. Going back to the know your audience, it reminds me of when I started my brand. So, I started in the TV world, specifically with TV hosts. So, my first clients were people I met at this workshop I told you about. And then they started to tell their friends once we launched their sites, call Phil, he's really great. And I started teaching at that school where I took the workshop. I started teaching TV hosts how to build and promote your brands. And so what made TV hosts really good at what they do was that they would know exactly who they were speaking to. And I encourage all of you to do the same. Know the name of the person you're speaking to. Have them in your mind, and don't be afraid of a niche. Don't be afraid of being pigeonholed. People say, oh, I'm so worried about being pigeonholed if this is my brand, which basically means I'm so worried at being so good at something that people call me for that. No, that's a good thing. Embrace it. And in fact, when you satisfy an audience well, then secondary and tertiary markets are also going to start to call you because you've satisfied a need, like every good business does. Let's get into some building of brands. And I'm going to go through fairly quickly. So we're talking now about visuals because I want to save time for questions because I know you're going to have some good ones. This is a client of mine that's based in Toronto as well as San Francisco. He's an investor and coaches entrepreneurs. He came to me with this website about a year ago. He's fantastic. We had dinner on Sunday, met for the first time after working together for a year. And once I got to know him, I said, Dinesh, why is your photo so spooky? And I was like, they're coffee beans. I guess I don't get it. So, we talked and we started to work together. We did this thing called a brand audit when I try and figure out, okay, what are we going to do with you? What's working? What's not? Let's make a roadmap moving forward. And Dinesh is like, okay, Phil, I'm skeptical, but I trust that you can deliver on this. So I said, great, let's rebrand you. Let's start with photography. So he was in San Francisco. I paired him up with one of my fab photographers in SF, and I said, let's try and get your personality. I want to be inspired by the colors. Photography, by the way, is probably my secret sauce. It makes all of my projects look fantastic, and it's highly underrated. Highly underrated. People just take a photo of themselves against a white background, put it up on LinkedIn, and call it a day. But if you're going to spend $1,000 or $1,500 on a suit to go to work in, spend that money on a photo shoot, because your profile photo is going to be seen by far more people than you wearing that cute little suit. Your photography is everything. It's the one area in branding that I would encourage you not to skimp on, because it's not a luxury. Now it's about being digitally responsible, making sure that your image, your profile image, the images on your website, accurately reflect you, who you are, who you've become. So let's go through this, looking for some sources of inspiration. A D, an elephant, which for him culturally represented wisdom, and then coffee, the idea of what he would call transformational coffee. So you get together, you exchange ideas, you create that relationship in person over a cup of coffee. Who knows where it goes from there? So I was like, okay, maybe we can merge all these together. Maybe we can't, but let's see what happens. You see it? Elephant, coffee, D. Ah. So not all logos have to be this clever, but this one I like to share because, in fact, we were able to merge things that are really important to him. And so more photos, branding, sub-brands. So Dinesh was like, Phil, I want to speak more. I was like, fantastic. Let's not say that you're a speaker. Let's brand that experience. Let's tell people what your core competencies are as a speaker, and it's more likely to get you booked at conferences. That video that I played at the very beginning, I send to conference organizers, and it single-handedly gets me at least a lot of callbacks for conferences because other people don't take the time to make material like that. That video cost me a lot of money, but it's already paid for itself because it's different than what everyone else is doing. So more branding. Every client requires different kind of collateral, web and print, depending on what it is they do. Then everything comes together as a website. So we have smart conversational copy on their websites, branding, photography. Websites are fun, it all comes together. I thought that I would give you another quick example of a client that I branded recently, a dental office. So let's dive into that one. This is their website before. This is their Facebook page before. Why are you laughing? Good thing they're not here. How rude. I didn't say anything. So again, looking for inspiration on the brand. Technology was very important to Dr. Ken. He has the latest and greatest technology in his practice, and that's something that all of his patients know. So let's brand technology. Let's take the metaphor of the hummingbird. It moves quickly, has all kinds of signification, and so let's see what we can do and merge that concept. So we don't just give them, so photography, I was like, don't give me headshots. Headshots is the H word in my office. I want personality. Show me the dynamic of your team, and this accurately reflects the staff. Don't just give me one logo. I want multiple logo compositions depending on the use. That is up on the sign on the back wall of the office. That's used in email signatures. That is the icon that we can use on stationery as a stamp, embossing. That's just same kind of thing depending on the use. It could be great as a sticker. They've got a satellite office that we also brand within the branding, the brand identity, we would call it. Color, let's make some decisions. Let's not go rogue and use any color we feel like that day. Let's stick to a system and respect it so we start to build that inherent brand integrity or brand value. Typography, let's not go rogue and use a font that we feel like that day. Let's look at Google Fonts or Typekit for great fonts that work on the web and for print. Google Fonts and Typekit before someone asks me to repeat those. And then we have some fun with, okay, what is it we need to brand beyond this so that it's comprehensive? I like to brand everything. I even put my logo on my wrist. If I'm going to brand other people, I better brand myself. So I think you get the idea. This is giving you some examples of the steps of building a visual brand. Photography, brand identity, then usually website, and then the last step would be social profiles. But again, the rule to do this right is this. The best online branding is when we recreate the in-person experience as closely as possible. Regardless of your brand, this is the rule that applies to ensuring success in this world. So let's talk about promoting your brand in a non-traditional way. I'll spend a little bit of time on this, so then we're going to get to questions. So start to think about what questions you have for me. I'm looking forward to them. The sales pitch nowadays really doesn't work very well, especially with social media now giving us more control than ever to control what we see and what we consume. If you're a brand that's obnoxious or you're selling to us blatantly, we'll either ignore you, which we've all become very good at because it's all around us all the time. We'll either ignore you or we'll click unfollow or block or whatever variation of that. And we have control over what we see. So now brands, as I mentioned, are starting to freak out a little bit, going, okay, how do we earn the respect and the attention span of our followers and our fans and our customers and our clients? The best brands right now are telling stories. So if you look on Instagram, if you look on Facebook, even on Twitter in 140 characters or less, the best brands right now are telling stories, and they're creating a form of storytelling that is building a lifestyle brand. So it's not always, for example, on a clothing brand like Madewell. You're not going to see, here's what's on sale this week. You're going to have a shot that looks, like their perfect customer that's doing something in action, and you see the brand, you see the living brand. I mean, there are all kinds of brands that are doing this well right now. I think off the top of my head, I think of Harry's, which is a brand you should go check out. It's an offshoot of Warby Parker, the glasses, that just came to Toronto, actually, I heard. Harry's is a men's shaving product. It's literally just razors, but they've built a really a strong visual brand. Check them out. I think of Quip, which is a toothbrush, Q-U-I-P. It's a toothbrush subscription where every 3 months they send me a brand new head to my toothbrush. And it's branded so well that I was like, I have to reward you for how awesome your branding is by buying your product. I do that sometimes. And then I write it off as research. So there's a lot of brands that right now, startups especially, that are figuring this out. And it's really interesting to see. It's not the top brands that are doing this well. It's a lot of the startups and the newer brands that are doing it well from the beginning. And so storytelling is the route to doing it well. Let's talk about your social media. We've talked a lot about branding, and it would be wrong of me to not talk even a little bit about social media. 2 really important rules that will help everyone in this room. I think we all probably agree that we feel overwhelmed by how many social media platforms there are and that we're supposed to be creating content on them. If we spend all of our time doing that, how are we going to have time to do what we actually love and get paid to do? So I approach this from I try to approach it from a realist standpoint in saying you need to prioritize your platforms, give them purpose so you have motivation to update them, and your audience knows what to expect. So prioritize your platforms and give them purpose, and I'll explain. Rather than being mediocre on 10 social media platforms, I think instead you should be awesome on 3. Be really awesome on 3 platforms that are appropriate for your brand. Platforms where your audience hopefully is. That's why you're active on them, and you can use these tools as a way to tell stories and build engagement with your audience. The next question is usually, Okay, well, Phil, what are your 3 priority platforms? So I'm going to tell you before someone asks. For me, number 1 is Twitter. Even 2 years after writing this book and updating it, I still believe Twitter is the most important social media platform for accessing a targeted audience for free. People will say, oh, Twitter stock is down. Oh, there's less engagement. Okay. It's still a really, really powerful social media platform that almost everyone doesn't take advantage of. Unless you've read Shut Up and Tweet. By a show of hands, who's read the book? Okay, that's not enough. So we have copies at the back as a reminder. Chapter 6 of the book, so I wrote the book. I went back to my students when I was teaching at the workshop, and I said, okay, what's the most important thing you've ever learned? They said, Phil, your strategy for growing your Twitter numbers. So I've had clients book auditions, book jobs, because they had so many Twitter followers. If you're not growing your Twitter followers by at least 800 a month, then you're not doing it right. And so that's what I teach chapter 6. It's called Popularity Contest. And I tell you step by step how to grow your Twitter followers. Not just grow from a vanity standpoint, but start conversations with influencers and customers and partners and colleagues without having to spend money. You can only do that right now on Twitter in the most effective way. You can't do it on Facebook without spending money on advertising. That's why Twitter is number 1. Number 2, Pinterest. For me, probably not for you, unless you have a visual brand. Pinterest for me was like an aha moment. I used to pin examples of recipes and places I wanted to travel and cute outfits. And then I was like, wait, why are you doing that? That's really dumb. Phil, why don't you take your own advice? Okay. What would I tell a client? I would tell a client, pin something that's relevant to your brand. What does your audience want from you? My audience wants from me great examples of branding. Aha, so I started pinning great examples of branding. Business cards, websites, logos, even advertising, products, packaging. And by doing this 5 minutes a day, I went from 800 followers to 20,000 followers in a year. And it's kind of fun. It's like the thing I do when I have downtime. I just open up the app, which is amazing, and I pin. And it becomes a very valuable resource for me, rather than clicking Save As on an image that I like on the web and then hiding it somewhere on my computer to never be found again. I pin it in the right category, and not only do I benefit from that, but so do 20,000 of my followers that use me as a resource. That's called giving your platforms purpose. Give yourself structure so that you know why you're active on the platform, and then it will, in turn, give your audience structure to know why they're subscribing to you. Your favorite TV show isn't on at a random time every single week. Humans like structure. They like purpose. They like to know why they're paying attention to you. Give them a reason. Number 3, it's a love-hate relationship for me with Instagram. I have a lot of anxiety over my images looking pretty and choosing the right filter, and oh God, because people look to me for visuals and I'm the worst photographer. But I'm trying to get over it. So, in front of all of you. So, Instagram is something that I've been working at, especially with how much I travel. That gives me a great opportunity to take pictures around the world and use it as a way to let people know where I am and what I'm doing. There are a lot of other social media platforms out there that you might want to consider. I could give you strategies on each one, but we would be here for 3 hours. So instead, I'm going to go through them fairly quickly. If you have specific questions about these platforms, I want you to ask them. Twitter, Pinterest, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Snapchat. That's an interesting one. Facebook is one of my least favorite. That's why I put it at the end. Usually it goes first, but it doesn't get that much attention in Phil's presentation. But if you have questions about Facebook, I can answer them. And there are many more. Point is, there's a lot of platforms out there to be active on. Choose 3 to be a rock star on, and it will position you better for success and allow you to spend your time doing whatever it is that you're meant to be doing. Finally, I mentioned Phil Pallen Academy. I just last week filmed 70 videos for it. I'm going to do a live training call with people. It's all like school themed, so I'm going to have a yearbook where people can list their information and start to build these networking. So I wanted to just share that. It's not ready to launch yet. It was supposed to be, but I'm a little bit behind. But I'm going to launch it November 1st. And the way to find out about this is by signing up for my newsletter on my website. So if you go to my website, philpallen.co, do this, sign up for the thingy at the bottom, get on my list, get into my world, and you'll be the first to know. And I'm going to have a special membership offer exclusively for people who've attended one of my 8 workshops around the world. And this is one of them. This is Toronto. Okay, that's enough talking from me. Now I would love to open it up to questions. And just before we get started, how much time do we have for questions?
We have about
15, 20 minutes. Perfect. So hopefully you have some questions brewing. And I don't have a handheld, so if you want to tell me the question, I'll come to you, and then I'll repeat the question so everyone can hear it. Yeah. Hey.
My name is Bruce Harpham.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah, hi.
Hi.
I tweeted at you earlier today.
Cool.
Yeah.
Did I acknowledge it?
You did. You
Oh,
liked it.
thank God.
So my question is, I have my first book coming out next September. It's called Project Managers at Work. I've built an email list of about 5,500.
Great.
I want to sell, kind of in the first year, like 10,000 copies. So what are my
So Phil, give me a marketing plan, quick.
Or have you worked with, say, selling books, selling your own, selling others? What are you seeing that's working in that area?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of, great questions. So he's wondering, you're going to launch your book. And I love when people ask questions at workshops because it gives you an opportunity to tell the rest of the room what your brand is and what you're doing. I know what you're up to. Oh, you're good. In fact, that's creative. And actually selling a book nowadays requires a lot of creativity. There's a lot of authors, not just with publishers, but people that self-published, like me. Are you have a publisher or are you self-publishing? You have a publisher. So publishers are great. And sometimes they're not great because you think you have one and it's like, oh, great, I'm just going to get an advance and write a book and they're going to do everything else. Not the case anymore. They're typically also looking to you for ideas and execution on how to sell and market your own book. Creativity. And the internet is your oyster in terms of looking at what other people have done well. That's the best advice I would give you. Surround yourself with creatives that can collaborate with you. For me, my business started to change, and actually, when I wrote my book, it was shortly around the time that Lauren started working with me a lot more and now works with me full time. But that kind of collaboration has transformed the business. Being able to have those conversations with someone else. Creativity, do something that other people aren't doing so that they remember you. A book on its own is not that exciting, right? So give us a reason to pay attention to you. Give us a reason we have to have your book, either on our Kindle or do the audiobook or the physical book. I actually recorded an audiobook mostly because I like to talk. And that has been one of the strongest selling parts of the different avenues that people can buy. It's been amazing. Plus, if it's on audible.com and you're the first book that people buy, then you get a bounty of $50 just because it's the first one they buy, which is kind of awesome. So I'm just kind of prompting some ideas. If you want specific ideas, you have to pay me much more. No. But at least that, just what I've seen recently in terms of what people are doing really well, it's the creative ideas that gets the press and gets people talking about it that drives a lot more attention to you. And it's usually not based just on the topic, but on something that's timely and interesting that people talk about. Yeah, great question. Hey.
My name's Lydia.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Could you talk a bit about the selection of the 3 platforms, given that certain ones are target, younger people, like Snapchat, they all use that, whereas Facebook is more like middle-aged women.
Yeah.
Can you just talk about, how would you go about selecting them?
Absolutely. It would totally depend, I don't know why I'm walking around with this anymore, I don't need this. It would totally depend on your brand. So I need to know more about your brand before recommending specific platforms. However, what I would do, what you should do, and what everyone here should do, for the fun of it, make a list of all the social media platforms that you could be active on. And with your team or your colleagues, I would dedicate a whole hour to brainstorming what is it we could do? How could we take our brand and effectively market ourselves, or not market, but tell stories using these platforms, and start to force yourself to get creative about how you might be able to use these platforms. Then, once you force yourself to see, at least start to prompt that creativity with each one, then prioritize. What are the 3 that are going to be most important for you? Of course, with each platform, there are specific demographics. LinkedIn, for example, working professionals, people with money. Advertising on LinkedIn can cost $10 a click. It's insanely expensive to advertise on, but there are things you can do on LinkedIn, for example, that don't require money, like blogging and using keywords that are relevant to your audience is something that I've been experimenting with. That's LinkedIn, but Snapchat, as we know, it's a lot of young people. But then the young people will be driven somewhere else when all the old people start to join it, just like Facebook. I had fun with this when I went to the high schools. I was like, so how many of you are on Facebook? And they made like an audible grunt. They're like, You know, so, and Instagram is kind of the next one where I would say Instagram still spans the most age groups in terms of demographics, but it's starting to change because the kids migrate where the kids, yeah. This morning I was really making a point that I was part of that group, but no, I'm not doing that now. You know, they'll migrate to something else. And so I think just taking the time to brainstorm about what you can do. And you may not come up with good ideas on some of those platforms, and that should alert you that might not be one of your priority platforms. So it's a little bit of a brainstorm on, is my audience here? If so, what could I give them that would keep them engaged with me day to day? And have fun with it. Yeah, great question. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question that I'm a human rights lawyer, and I'm also deaf, which is why we've got the captioner here. So what I'm trying to figure out is that I've gotten a lot of media as well as awards for the work I do, but I don't advertise at all because I'm too busy and I'm afraid to advertise. So the question I have is, how much time would you spend on brand development in a day, so that you can kind of block out, okay, I need an hour to do a couple of tweets or post an article on LinkedIn or whatever?
Oh, I love that
try
question.
To figure out how I can leverage awards that I might get or profile in the Western magazine or whatever more effectively.
So if you've built a successful business without advertising, I don't really think you need to start advertising. That's really exciting because I also have built a business without advertising at all. It's a really great position to be in. I think you're already on the right track in thinking, okay, I need to spend half an hour or an hour of my day on building my brand. Very few people actually schedule it and take the time to do just that. My recommendation for you, offering a professional service, as I do as well, would be treat yourself as a client and try really hard to consider yourself with the same level of importance as the clients who pay you money and allow you to have a business. I find this very hard to do, and I'm not, to be frank, very good at it. But I have a team of people that are more responsible than me to fall back on to make sure that my tweets get posted. At any given time, my tweets are scheduled 2 weeks in advance for me and for my clients. I'll jump in once or twice a day to send timely stuff and to interact with people real time. As you know, yeah, right? Apparently, exactly. That's me. And so that's a system that I've created that works very well for me. And all you have to do is figure out that system. Don't even think about advertising unless you need to. Spend that time developing your brand and telling your story that people are really, as you know, already really interested in. It's a great brand that you have. Yeah.
Just a quick follow-up. Do you feel that websites are always necessary, or can you build your brand just by using social media?
Very interesting. I met someone earlier today who has no website but has built a brand using social media. I still think that having a website helps you, and here's why. It might not be the answer you expect. Having a website gives you more control over how people will perceive you, how people will develop a first impression of you. And I don't know about you, but I happen to be a control freak. And I want to know that when people are going to go online and they're going to Google me, not if, but when, they will. Some of you probably Googled me to go, should I spend money to attend a workshop to hear this guy? I want that to be a positive experience. And the only way that I can guarantee that it's going to be positive is if I have some control over crafting that first impression. So that's my perspective on websites. If you own your own name domain, ideally, or you own the name of your website, or your business, rather, or you've come up with some creative compromise if you can't get your name or your business.com, there are a lot of other top-level domains that you can use, like .pizza. I'm not recommending that one unless your brand is pizza, but there's really cool top-level domains that are likely relevant to your industry. But build a presence to show for that online so that you have control over how people consume and develop that first impression. Great question. Any others? How are we doing for time? We're good. Couple more minutes. Fantastic. Hey. Nice to meet you.
My question is, with all the things you have going on, how do you keep yourself and your team focused?
How do I keep
Yourself and your team focused?
Oh, yeah. That's hard. I'm still figuring that out, to be honest with you. I might be a master at some things, but I'm not a master at everything. And for me, my business has grown pretty quickly in a short amount of time. And I kind of at times feel like I have no idea what I'm doing, but I kind of embrace it. I make sure that I put a lot of time and effort into hiring the right people. And I don't mean hire full-time. I've never hired anyone full-time without starting them first as a contractor to make sure that the dynamic works well. But I'm learning quickly how to delegate. This year for me in business has not been about making more money and booking more clients. This year for me has been positioning my brand so that I can effectively stand back and let everything operate without me. This week, for example, I've done 6 workshops in 2 days, and I have absolutely no idea what's going on with my business. And that feels kind of awesome because it's the first time that everyone has been delegated their roles and it's functioning without me. By functioning without me, it allows me to move on to the next project that I can develop, which for me will be the online academy. Finally, it's been years, people have come to me at workshops and stuff, Phil, I want to learn from you. And my only answer has been, great, pay me thousands of dollars and I'll help you one-on-one. But that's it. Other than having a book, that's been it. So I'm really, really excited to be able to help a lot of people build their brands that are self-starters and doers that can do it themselves. And by having that kind of delegation in place, it allows me to move on to the next project. And I have ideas for all kinds of other projects because apparently I'm an entrepreneur. But by delegating and being organized and creating systems like we talked about, that will allow you to stay focused and also give space to your team to be able to do what they do best and be excited about it and feel like they're a part of the evolution of your brand. Yes?
Phil, yeah, 2 things just to reinforce is delegation. I do some teaching crap, but anyway, it's called don't get yourself a dog and you keep on barking yourself.
I love that. That's true. Yes, that's fantastic.
People I deal with do that. The other one is R&D. And I'll ask for who the business grads here from Western. I'm a business grad from Western. Who's a business grad from Western? Show your hands. Come on, show your hands. Okay. Okay, R&D. What does R&D stand for? Somebody give it to me. Come on, stick out of the class. Research and development. There you go. Okay, what I say, positive that is a competitor. But anyway, they're not a profit. R&D, as long as it's ethically, morally, legally correct. As respect to management processes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And your stuff, what you do, processes, right? R&D is R&D stands for rip off and blow. But make it your own. It's called
Yes.
practices. Go find out, right?
I love it.
But make it customize it to you because you can't just cut and paste. But it is. Okay.
Don't copy anyone. Be strongly inspired by what others are doing well so that you can add your own originality.
Okay, here, say that one
Yes.
again. Come on, say that one again, Phil.
Don't copy anyone, but be strongly inspired by what others are doing well.
And learn from them and their mistakes.
And learn from their mistakes. Absolutely. Yes, it is.
That's why R&D wants to add.
I love it. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Phil.
Yes, of course. Hey.
Can you just tell us a bit more about your activity? Like what kind of things you'll be able to get at it?
Sure. It's almost like I planted that question, but I promise I didn't. So I am going to essentially open it up on November 1st. It will be an online community, so a membership site where I am creating, basically each month will have a focus. So for example, the first month might be positioning your brand. And in that, I will do a coaching call for probably 90 minutes with everyone that's a part of the academy, remotely, and likely featuring a guest, and to go into detail, like a lot of the content I've shared tonight, but specifically on a topic so that I get to go into detail on it, that in a way that helps other people. So there'll be a coaching call every single month. There'll be a closed Facebook group with members only, so that any kind of question that you might have for me or for others, it has that kind of collaborative feel. Videos every single week on the focus of that month will get emailed out and posted in the login site. I have a thing called Playground. It's all school themed. So Playground is all of the apps and business tools that I use to grow and organize my business, from scheduling my social media content, from booking flights and hacking airfare prices, all of it. Everything I use that I think is cool, that has had a huge impact on my business, gets posted in there. Those are a few of the features, and we're ironing out the last few, and you want to know how much it costs? I make it as cheap as possible. It's going to be $30 a month. Yeah. So because I don't want it to, I should charge way more, but I want it to be available for everyone, because it's what I'm really excited about, to finally be able to help everyone. So yeah, thanks for asking. Thank you for asking. Any other questions before we wrap? This has been really great. You've asked really fantastic questions. Yes?
I find that creating content is a lot of work.
Uh-huh.
And I manage several companies. What tips do you have for creating content when you have several
A limited amount of time.
Yes.
Create content that you can repurpose in ways. So for example, I have junior strategists that are working for me in training, and they'll write blogs for me because I despise writing blogs. Hate it. I would rather talk in front of 10 million people than sit down at a computer and write a blog post. So it's not what I'm good at, and I don't have time to do it. So I call into my conference line and record my thoughts on a topic. Usually after doing something like this and I'm all revved up, I'll call in, record my thoughts, send the recording to rev.com, one of the sites that'll be featured in the playground, to transcribe it, which costs $1 a minute of audio to have it actually transcribed. I then send that transcription to it actually automatically sends to my junior strategist, who turns it around into a blog post in about 48 hours. I then decide, is it going to be a blog post or will it be a podcast script? Because they're basically the same thing. If I decide, I record a podcast live every single Friday. If it's going to be my podcast script, I copy and paste my intro and outro, good to go. That's a system. And I know what I'm good at, which is hosting a podcast and doing workshops. Writing is not one of my strengths. I have a short attention span. So I leverage my team to help me deliver in what they love to do. My junior emailed me today. She's like, Phil, just so you know, I, in caps, love writing blog posts. I'm like, thank God, because I despise it. That's the system that I have in place to facilitate it, so that every minute of my time is spent properly doing what it is that I do well. Don't try and do it all yourself. Figure out with your team, what do you do well? What do I do well? How can we work together to make it manageable and keep it fun? Because if it's not fun, that's going to come through in the content you're creating. And then I would finally say use your analytics. Look and see how well posts are performing to inform the decisions you make in terms of content creation moving forward. It's the internet, so it's all trackable, it's all out there. Yeah, a few quick tips for you. That's probably time, right? Yeah, great. So if you have another question, please do me the biggest favor in the world and tweet it to me at Phil Pallen. Go find me on Twitter. Go add me on all those other platforms, Instagram and stuff. And thank you so much for being here. It's really been a pleasure.